The indictment also says that a shotgun was recovered at the crime scene. And lastly, Sandra, the indictment also specifically makes mention of the fact that Bowers made statements during the assault about his desire to, quote, kill Jews. We expect that this arraignment is going to get underway 10 o'clock Eastern time, about 50 minutes or so. We'll be inside. Back to you.
We'll be watching for all of that. A rainy Pittsburgh morning there. Thank you.
10 minutes past. Fox News alert now. We might be a bit closer to finding out how this plane went down early in the week with 189 people on board. Divers apparently finding one of the plane's black boxes. So what can we learn from that? We'll get back on that story in a moment here, Sandra.
Plus, as we close in on the midterms, 5 days out, we're getting brand new polls in, what they say about some of the biggest Senate races. We'll have that next.
This election results and resistance. How about their whole theme? Obstruct, resist. What the hell do you get out of that?
We have brand new Fox polling numbers telling us a lot of different things about the Senate races across the country, 5 different states. And we are honored today to have two of the best in the business when it comes to polling. Darren Shaw and Chris Anderson, both members of our Fox News election night decision team. Gentlemen, how you doing? No pressure, by the way. You know, right? We see you once a year maybe, and we're going to see you on Tuesday night. So welcome here. Just want to share with our viewers right now some of the numbers we're getting out of Arizona with Sinema and McSally, okay? In Arizona, our polling shows McSally has a lead. The president won there by about 4.5 points 2 years ago. But in this Senate race right now, this is what we show, okay? McSally 46, Sinema 46. Hold that thought, okay, guys? Because I just want to take our viewers back out here to another area, and that's Missouri. I mean, too close to call in Arizona. McCaskill and Holly, they're too close to call, too. 43% to 43% there. Chris, you're digging into these numbers. You're talking to people all over the country. What do you see right now, 5 days out?
Well, specifically in Missouri and Arizona, these races were both 3-point leads for the Democrats there when we first polled these states back in September. What has happened, they've both closed to a tie, and in both cases we have seen the women moving towards the Republican, not in large numbers, but they've cut the gender gap in about half. So the Republicans in both those states have made progress among women. There's an enthusiasm gap in Missouri where Democrats are a little bit more excited and interested in the race at this point. We're not seeing that in Arizona. It's matched. Republicans and Democrats equally interested. So both of these are going to come down to the wire. And to use an old cliche, who will show up? Yeah, who will vote? It comes back to that so often. But the movement in women in that state, I don't know if that's something a lot of people would have suggested. Come over to Indiana, Darren, and maybe you can dissect this for us. The Democrats, Joe Donnelly, Mike Brown is the Republican. This is a state the president won easily 2 years ago. Look at that spread. It was 20 points in 2016. Beat Hillary Clinton by 1 million votes. You come to the Senate race right now, and our polling shows the Democrat with a 7-point lead. What's happening in Indiana? Is that different from what Chris is describing there a moment ago?
Well, I think a little bit of the bill is candidate effects. In Arizona, you've had McSally, who's been very aggressive going after Kristen Sinema. Josh Hawley's run a pretty strong race in Missouri. You know, Claire McCaskill is basically Houdini out there, keeps winning in a state that's traded pretty red. But I tell you, Joe Donnelly has been tough, and Braun has not been able to sort of make the attacks stick. The ones that have kind of rallied Republican women, as Chris mentioned, in other states. They haven't, you know, they've kind of been bouncing off Donnelly a little bit in Indiana. I'll tell you another thing, Bill, take a look at that libertarian vote in Indiana. It's 5%, so you got undecideds and a third-party vote out there. I'll tell you, the Republicans in Indiana have to hope that the libertarian vote collapses and that undecideds break against the incumbent. That's always a conventional wisdom, but we'll see if it happens in Indiana.
Okay, we're doing something different this year. We just want to explain this to viewers as best we can. We're not doing exit polling anymore. It's called voter analysis, and these are kind of the bullet points. Interviews conducted Election Day, multiple platforms, 85,000 interviews as opposed to 20,000. Detailed results from 47 different states, and allows us to analyze more subgroups. All right. Now, what does all that mean to a mathematician like yourself? So you start on Saturday. It runs through Tuesday. Chris, why is this important? Why the change?
Sure. So in some ways, this is our methodology catching up with how voters are voting these days. There's so many people voting early or by mail, so they're not actually going to the polls, so they're not there for exit pollers to interview. Second major innovation is we are talking to all registered voters, not just those who vote. So not only will we come away knowing why people made the decisions that they did at the ballot box, but we should have some real insights into why people stayed home and didn't vote, which could be the determining factor in any number of races across the country.
Darren, just add to that, and if you can, you're doing this for a reason because you think it's going to bring us more accuracy as opposed to elections past. How?
Yeah. Well, take a state like Arizona, Bill. I mean, you're going to get close to, close to 100% of the vote is going to be mail-in. Not quite 100%, but a state like Nevada, where there's also a tough Senate race, Colorado, traditionally a battleground state in presidential, that's in 100% mail. Oregon, the exit polling traditionally does sort of a cursory, 800-person sample as kind of a fail-safe, and then they do their exit polls. They're not really getting you the kind of detailed information about what the majority of the electorate is thinking or doing there. So as Chris mentioned, America is close to voting 50% convenience voting, absentee, mail, that sort of thing. We're switching methodologies here to try to get a better picture of what those voters are doing heading into the election.
We showed our viewers just a moment ago the approval ratings in the 5 states that we just polled between North Dakota and Indiana. Chris, I just need a quick answer on this, and Darren, to you as well. Chris, do you see a blue wave as of today?
Putting me on the spot. Not in the Senate, but I am seeing some things that Democrats should be encouraged about in the House.
Okay. Darren, what about you?
I think that's probably about right. I've adjusted downward from 40-seat turnover in the House. I'm down a little bit, maybe a little lower than Chris, but we're right at that cut point. If that's a blue wave, then so be it.
See you this weekend, guys. Chris Anderson, Darren Shaw, you bet it. Voter Analysis 2018. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll see you soon.
One of the races we are watching closely at this moment, the Senate contest in West Virginia. President Trump headed there to make a push for Republican challenger Patrick Morrisey against incumbent Joe Manchin. Morrisey will join us live next. Plus this.
Vote, vote, vote. Vote! I'm not going to do that. November 6th. Please vote. Vote.
Oprah getting involved in the midterms, where she is headed and who she's supporting. Ahead. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh reportedly rejecting money raised in his name after sexual misconduct allegations were leveled against him during his confirmation process. A GoFundMe page raising nearly $600,000, but judicial ethics restraints prevent the justice from accepting the money or directing it to any third party. The founder of the page says he will donate the funds to programs run by the Archdiocese of Washington.
Crews now have recovered those black boxes from that Lion Air jet that went down off the sea and off the coast of Indonesia early in the week. 189 people on board. Investigators hoping it will help explain that crash of a plane that was only 2 months old. Benjamin Hall back on that story in London today. Benjamin.
Yeah, hi, Bill. And this is the break that all air crash investigators hoped for. They had actually located the box a couple of days ago, about 100 feet down in the Java Sea, but because of those strong currents, they hadn't yet been able to get to it and bring it up. Well, finally, they've done that. They've brought it to the surface, and they are about to start downloading the information that's on it. It is just one of 2 boxes that was on the plane, the data recorder, and it's the one which records every reading from every device on board and helps to identify the technical faults that ultimately brought it down. Although called black boxes, they are in fact orange, and divers are still looking for that second one. That's the one which records audio inside the cockpit, the one which so often captures the last few moments. Investigators from the US and Boeing are both now in Indonesia to assist with the investigation. They were seen pouring over debris that had been brought out of the water onto the port. Well, now that box has been found, that will be the focus of their investigation. It'll take about 4 weeks for a preliminary report, several months more for the complete findings to be released. As the first funeral of a victim got underway, more details now about the plane's last few moments. Flight tracking sites show that the plane had erratic speed and altitude in the early minute of the flight, and several passengers who flew on the same plane the day before reported terrifying descents in the first 10 minutes in the air. Now, Lion Air have made it very clear that that plane was checked out after those events the day before and that it was cleared to fly. But the Indonesian Transport Minister has said all those who checked it and the technical director have been stood down from their posts. So perhaps an indication of where the investigation is going from here.
More to come on that. Benjamin Hall, thank you so much, live in London today. Thank you, Sandra.
President Trump traveling to the Show Me State, hoping to sway voters in a Senate race too close to call as time ticks down to the midterms. Missouri GOP Senate candidate Josh Hawley will join us next.
Also a Supreme. Right on time, 9:30, watching the opening bell right here. Quick check of the markets and check out the big board. It is big at the moment, up about 75 points. We are off and running today, 5 days before our midterm. Triple-digit gains for the moment. Pretty decent day yesterday, too. I mean, we shook things off from the day before, right? Up about 250 points at the close yesterday. Earnings, economic data, jobs number tomorrow. Yeah. Dow Jones, I mentioned 240 to the positive side from yesterday. So
don't underestimate that.
There we go.
A big jobs number just days before election day. It's gonna have some influence. And but what a month for October. Not so good. Worst one since January 2016.
Most volatile or worse in terms of downdraft?
Percentage loss.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's, you know what I say? You know what I call that? Yeah. No bueno.
He does, actually.
I'm a bull. It's no bueno. All right.
We'll be watching the markets for you. Meantime, President Trump heading to Missouri today, making a push for GOP Senate candidate Josh Hawley. Hawley is locked in a tight race with Democrat incumbent Claire McCaskill. A Fox News poll showing the two candidates are virtually tied with only 5 days to go till midterm elections. Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley joins us now. Josh, good morning to you. How are you feeling 5 days out?
We feel great. We feel very good. We're delighted to have the president here in the state today, coming back in a few days. We've got strong momentum on our side, great crowds, huge enthusiasm, and people are ready to take back this Senate seat and stop a liberal takeover. As you mentioned, today, and he's coming back in a couple of days, 2 visits in the final 5 days before Election Day, the president. Why is his presence there so needed and so important? Well, because Missouri could be the seat that determines control of the Senate. You look around the map, I mean, it really could come down here to the state of Missouri, and voters in Missouri know that. That's why they're so energized to vote. I mean, people, as we travel the state, and I have been all over this state, people are very enthusiastic out there. And I think the president knows how high the stakes are, and we're sure glad that he is coming to see us twice. The president carried Missouri by 19 points in the 2016 election. How popular is he there today? No, I mean, his policies are well received. He is well received. I mean, and that's putting it mildly. I mean, look, we've got unemployment at 3.3% in the state of Missouri, wage growth at a 10-year high, rural unemployment working, but Claire McCaskill, my opponent in this race, wants to throw all of that in reverse. She's for open borders. She's for amnesty. She's for higher taxes. That's not what Missourians want, and that's why this election is so important. You're talking about how popular the president's policies are. In recent days, the president has decided to take up the consideration of ending birthright citizenship. Where do you stand on that issue with the president? Well, I think we've absolutely got to end chain migration, and I'm willing to consider any proposal to do it. You know, the president, by executive order, may have the ability to vary the naturalization process. He said the other day that, of course, the U.S. Supreme Court will have to decide exactly what the 14th Amendment means in this connection. But I think any proposal, whether it's executive action or a legislative proposal that would get rid of chain migration, reform our immigration system so that it actually works for the workers of my state and of this country, is absolutely vital. But specifically on that issue, do you support his call and consideration to end birthright citizenship? Well, the president said yesterday that the Supreme Court is going to actually have to weigh in on what the 14th Amendment means. It's a constitutional question, and he's right about that. But he's also right that he can probably vary the naturalization process, and Congress probably can too. And I think we need to consider all avenues to end chain migration, to stop the influx, of illegal immigrants, absolutely, into this country, and also to reform our immigration system. Look, we have an immigration system that does not work for the workers of this country, including especially the people of Missouri. We need to change it. The president's right about that.
All right, so let's take a look at the latest polling in this race. We showed the Fox News poll, which shows it as a dead heat, even at 43%. Here is the latest Real Clear Politics average, which shows you with a 2-point lead. I can't stress it enough. We're just days away. The president's visiting there twice. What is your strategy and the days and the hours left?
Just to tell it like it is. I mean, to remind people that Senator McCaskill's record is a liberal left record, voting for amnesty, sponsoring an open borders bill, voting for higher taxes, voting against Brett Kavanaugh, and participating in the smear campaign against him. This isn't a record the people of Missouri want. And, you know, she knows it, because she wants to talk about anything other than her record, but we're not going to let her get by with it.
Well, she does
November
talk about her
6th
voting record in this interview with our own Brett Baer on Special Report on Monday. Here's your opponent.
I voted for over 70% of President Trump's judicial nominees. 70%. I voted for more than half of his cabinet members. I vote with him half the time. He signed 38 of my bills into law. That doesn't sound like, to me, somebody who is knee-jerk. Some of my colleagues are knee-jerk against the president. I don't get up every day figuring out how to fight the president. I get up every day trying to figure out how I can fight for Missourians.
Really interesting move and strategy that we're seeing from her in these final days. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a bunch of nonsense. I mean, this is somebody who votes with Chuck Schumer 90% of the time. Probably almost all Democrats vote with the president, quote unquote, half the time. I mean, if it's renaming the local post office. But when it comes to Brett Kavanaugh, Justice Gorsuch, tax cuts, immigration, tariffs, Senator McCaskill has been against this president and against our state on every issue that matters, not just this last year, but now for 12 long years. It's a liberal left record that she has. She knows it. That's why Chuck Schumer has spent so much money in Missouri, here more than anywhere else, trying to get her reelected. She's a reliable left-wing Democrat. That's why she's going to lose on next Tuesday.
She, on a campaign stop over the weekend, she implored volunteers on her campaign pick up extra shifts. She has suggested in that room that this race could come down to the number of folks in that room. She's talking about how close this is. How close do you believe that this race ultimately is, Josh?
Oh, it's absolutely close, so there's no doubt about it. And but the momentum is also on our side, and you can see that. I think if you listen carefully to Senator McCaskill, and certainly if you come on the trail with us and look at our campaign versus hers, she's begging folks to help man her campaign offices. Meanwhile, we've got hundreds of volunteers all over the state out there knocking doors. Just knocked 1 million doors completed earlier this week. I mean, it's really our Get Out the Vote operation is extraordinary. The enthusiasm on our side is extraordinary, and that's why we're going to win.
Enthusiasm? How do you get them out to vote?
Oh, listen, folks know what the stakes are in this election. The Brett Kavanaugh hearings, that smear campaign, the United States Supreme Court, what Senator McCaskill did with the Senate Democrats there is tremendous motivation. The need to secure the border, tremendous motivation. The need to actually get wages growing and to prevent a massive tax increase, tremendous motivation. People are motivated. They're ready to vote.
Josh Hawley, you have got a heck of a few days ahead of you here. I'm assuming you're going to rest up, but it's going to be a busy few days for you. Any last words from you as the president? You await the president today.
We're so excited to have him. This is the most important Senate race in the country for determining control of the Senate. And it's a choice between the liberal left agenda of Claire McCaskill or the strong America agenda of Donald Trump. And I think I know which way Missourians are going to go.
The country is watching this race. Josh Hawley, thank you for taking the time to come on this morning.
Thank you.
22 before the hour, personal detail from the Supreme Court now coming to light decades after the fact. We are now learning retired Justice Sandra Day O'Connor rejected a marriage proposal from the late Chief Justice William Rehnquist. This is in the 1950s, early 1950s, long before they served together on the bench. That's according to a new biography about O'Connor, due to be published later next year, rather. The two dated at Stanford Law School. I did not know that stuff. That's some wild stuff there. I did not know that.
Learn something new every day.
She said no. Man. Sandra Day O'Connor just a few weeks ago put out a note at the age of 88. She's suffering from dementia and she's withdrawn from public life. life. So to her and her family and everybody in Arizona, our best to you. But that was the tidbit we were not aware of. So now we know.
Yeah. All right. Well, looking to the past as a possible guide for the future, the government now releasing a Watergate report that had been kept under wraps for decades. Could it be a roadmap for Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation?
Also, watch Ohio, Smitty. The Ohio race for governor is neck and neck, one of the tightest in the country. Huge implications here. The battle for the Buckeye State will go down to the wire, and the Republican is Mike DeWine. He wants the job, and we'll talk to him why, coming up next. 9:42 in Ohio. The governor's race there looking like a dead heat. Very little daylight between Democrat Richard Cordray and Republican Mike DeWine. The Real Clear Politics average showing Cordray leading by fewer than 3 points. Mike DeWine is Ohio's Attorney General, and he is my guest now out of Dayton, Ohio. And, sir, thank you for your time. I want to know where we are right now in the Buckeye State.
Thank you.
I know it's Ohio. I know it's always close. But why is this race so close now?
It's coming right down to the wire, and I think we always have close races in Ohio when there's no incumbent. But what this race really is all about, in my opinion, is do we go back or do we move forward? When Richard Cordray and Ted Strickland were in power in Ohio 8 years ago, we had double-digit unemployment. We lost over 400,000 jobs. We've come back. We've regained those 400,000 jobs. We've added another 150,000 in statistics that just came out last week. We had more new jobs created in Ohio in the last year than we've had in 22 years. So we're moving forward. What Cordray will do is raise taxes. He will dramatically increase spending. That is just not the formula for moving Ohio forward.
Okay, I'm looking at the economy. It's pretty good. And I'm looking at what the president did 2 years ago. He won the state by 8 points. And you know in Ohio, 8 points is a landslide. So what explains how close it is if jobs and the economy are issue number one?
Well, I think those are important issues. But look, Ohio's a battleground state, and you know, we always deal with that, particularly in an open gubernatorial race. If you go back and look through the last 50 years at open seats for governor, you'll find that they all come right down to the wire. But we feel we have good momentum. The president is coming in on Monday. I look forward to being with the president in Cleveland on Monday. I was with the vice president yesterday. Lindsey Graham came in the day before. So a lot of interest in this race.
Clearly, yeah. Between
really
the three.
have
Specifically, though, why Cleveland on Monday, and what does his presence do for your campaign?
Well, I think the president always brings energy. You know, this is an election that now turns out to be really just a lot about voter turnout. I mean, we're still persuading those voters who, you know, have not made up their mind, but it's also a question about who is going to show up. I mean, this is the Buckeye State. It's a very, very, very close race. Yeah,
when you canvass the country, and I know you've been focused where you are there, and I hear the argument you're making against your opponent. By the way, we invited Richard Cordray to come on. We hope he takes up our invitation. Still waiting for the call back, hopefully tomorrow, maybe Monday, but he's welcome here anytime. When you look at this election and see sort of what people are voting on, what does it come down to you? Is there, I said there's 1,000 storylines on Tuesday, and there's probably 1,000 storylines, but is there one storyline that can determine the direction of America and where the American mind and politics is today, sir?
You know, I can only tell you about Ohio, and it seems to me, Ohio, we come down to whether you want to go back with Cordray or head to the future. My running mate, John Husted, and I have a real vision for the future of the state of Ohio. We have a robust anti-drug plan, for example, which is a huge problem in the state of Ohio. My opponent, Richard Cordray, has endorsed State Issue 1, which is a George Soros proposed constitutional amendment that would give Ohio the most lenient drug laws in the nation. This is not where we want to go. It would say, for example, someone who had enough fentanyl in their possession, a drug dealer who had enough fentanyl in their possession to kill 10,000 people, that would become a misdemeanor in Ohio, and with absolutely no jail time. That's just a radical position, not something that we want. Eric Holder and Richard Cordray came into Ohio with a press conference a number of months ago, and that was their proposal. I think the voters are going to reject it. Even the Democrat nominee for Attorney General in Ohio is against it. Democrat and Republican judges are against it. So it's really a very radical position that Richard Cordray is
it'll be interesting.
And I think it's also radical, frankly.
Go ahead.
He's proposed $4 billion in new spending in Ohio. We have to balance our budget in Ohio, which is a good thing. So $4 billion of new spending simply means $4 billion of new taxes on the backs of Ohioans.
Yeah,
Not the right way to go.
Last point, your Baldwin-Wallace poll has you up by about a point, not quite a point, but it's 39.4 for you, Cordray 38.8, razor tight. Here's the tweet from the president. I know he endorses you. Here's what he said. Mike DeWine will be a great governor for the people of Ohio. He's an outstanding man who loves his state, always produces big. Richard Cordray will let you down just like he did when he destroyed the government agency that he ran. Clone of Pocahontas. That's not for Ohio. Mike has my total endorsement. There's another interesting storyline in Ohio. There are interesting rules the state has when the governor's in charge of national elections, meaning the year 2020. Is that a reason as to why the president would come there on the final day of campaigning on Monday?
Well, you'd have to ask the president that, but it's the reason I think that the Democrats have sent in a ton of money from California, a ton of money from New York, and from people who have no real interest in Ohio. I think the Democrats look at Ohio as a stepping stone to the White House. They've got to win. Having a Democrat governor in Ohio is something that they really want, and you can tell that by the amount of out-of-state money that's flowing into Ohio. What we focus on, though, every day is this is a race about Ohio, and it's for Ohioans. When you compare my record as Attorney General versus Richard Cordray's as Attorney General, we both had the same office. I beat him, followed him. He let untested rape kits sit around Ohio. When I got in office, we tested almost 14,000 of them. We got matches in 36%, so we had justice for the victims. He ignored that. He failed Ohio's rape victims.
Well, sir, thank you for your time. I'm out of time for now, but Richard Cordray is invited to come on here and respond to all that. So, Mike DeWine, thank you. Dayton, Ohio today. We'll see what happens on Tuesday.
Good to talk with you.
Thanks,
Bill.
Sandra.
The battle is far from over in Mississippi. 4 candidates running for 1 Senate seat. Will the outcome of this race affect who controls the Senate? We'll have a live report on that next.
Also, a hiker stranded, harshest conditions in the world. More than 10 rescue attempts before finally being saved. Details on the phone call that helped save her life.
I was screaming for help in the morning because I just had...
Our 4 candidates hoping to replace Republican Senator Thad Cochran. He stepped down earlier this year because of health issues. If no one gets to 50%, there will be a runoff for the top 2 candidates, regardless of party affiliation. Peter Ducey is live in Jackson, Mississippi. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Sandra. If the Senate map gets totally turned upside down elsewhere, then Mississippi could be the reason that the control of the Senate is not decided until November 27th. That is because next Tuesday's race here is a special election, and if nobody gets more than 50% of the vote, there's going to be a runoff at the end of the month with the top 2. And right now, according to a NBC poll, nobody has 50% of the vote. And it's unlikely, but possible, that runoff could be 2 Republicans, because a well-known Republican challenger has double-digit support right now, subtracting from the incumbent's total, leaving her in the 30s. The incumbent Republican Cindy Hyde-Smith has 38%. A Democrat, Mike Espy, is in second, 9 points back with 29%. And then the frequent primary challenger here in Mississippi, the conservative Chris McDaniel, is in third with 15%. Fourth place, another Democrat, Toby Barty, 2%. President Trump, who won the state by almost 20 points in 2016, does not want any drama. He is putting his weight and influence behind Cindy Hyde-Smith. He's rallied here for her, and he's tweeted too, writing, "Cindy Hyde-Smith has helped me put America first. She's strong on the wall, is helping me create jobs, loves our vets, and fights for our conservative judges. Cindy is voted for our agenda in the Senate 100% of the time and has my complete and total endorsement. We need Cindy to win in Mississippi." And there are still a substantial number of undecided voters here, according to local reports and local polls. So they could wind up making a huge difference, and the top 3 candidates are coming here to Jackson later on today to make their case. Sandra?
All right. Peter Ducey, thank you.
You guys have been a road warrior, haven't you? Out there. President Trump hitting immigration as he considers sending up to 15,000 troops to the southwest border. House Homeland Security Committee Chair Michael McCaul will address this issue. He's coming up live next hour. Plus, the president on a campaign blitz before next Tuesday. Next stop, Missouri tonight. How much of a difference will that make?
We will not bend. We will not break. We will never give in or back down.
How much of a difference will that make?
We will not bend. We will not break. We will never give in or back down. We will never surrender.